All right, quick bit of housekeeping before we start the episode. The Spoily Awards are coming up. What are the Spoilies, you're asking?
They are our totally real and not bogus awards for everything we reviewed here in the last year is up potentially for an award. We did nominations, and if you're curious how that process works, boy, we've got a whole episode about that for you.
Yeah, you can listen to that.
A very, very long episode, or we also have a short one that you can just go and listen to the nominations right now and, you know, just kind of make your own decisions.
Exactly.
Which is important because this is all about you, the listener, having a voice. No backroom deals with old men smoking cigars going on this episode.
That's a reference to the Oscars, right?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. It almost sounds like that's how we normally do stuff here.
This whole room's filled. I can't even see Ryan. There's so much cigar smoking.
No, so yeah, everybody gets a vote, and at the end we'll tally it, and we'll have the winners. On March 10th is when we're going to have the Spoily Awards. It'll be a YouTube video and a normal podcast episode. So, but right now through March 1st, you can vote in the Spoilies. So go to our website, spoilersintendedpodcast.com. On social, we got links to it in the Discord. On our Patreon. Any way that you can contact us, we have posted the Spoily Awards.
In this episode description, there's a link.
There is, yes. So vote in the Spoilies now. Let's start the episode.
.67% perfect average show.
What?
Wait, what?
Animation, terrible. Character development, so boring. Scores and soundtracks, I don't even know what I'm listening to. Story? What even is the story? Comedy, come on. Manic Pixie Dream Girl, give me a break.
Nicholas Sparks would have loved this show.
It sounds like this person listened to 46% of the show.
That was a 3-star review from IMDb.
Oh, wow.
Hello and welcome to Spoilers Intended, a podcast about series and films. I am your host, Andrew, joined as always by Ryan.
What's up?
And Steven.
Cowabunga, dude.
Wrong show?
Hey, I'm the Fonz now.
This
I'm
week...
hip, I'm cool. I'm not getting old, I swear.
What's up, fellow teens? I'm dabbing over here. You can't hear it, listeners, but I'm dabbing.
This week, we are discussing the 2014 anime Your Lie in April, produced by A1 Pictures, directed by Kyohei Ishiguro, and...
I think 2014 is when the dab came out, so that kind of dates me
I mean,
already.
it's a decade from now.
I know.
Oh my God. No, don't
say that.
That was last year. Why would you do
my
that?
goiter.
It's like the Crypt Keeper. Oh,
This is
man.
ancient history now.
Continue with whatever you were saying. Get us out. Take the off-ramp.
So we are knee-deep in Romance Month right now.
Love month.
Get ready for the
call it
love
that.
month.
But yeah, so we're talking about yet another romance anime this time, TV series, not a movie.
Are we,
and yeah, there's
Is it a
there's two romances in this.
Is it a romance, though?
Double the romance.
The romance of music and the romance of very sad children with pianos.
Say the name of what we're reviewing quickly.
Depressed children.
Yeah, so it's Your Lie in April.
Yes.
And
The romance of depressed children.
yes.
High school.
That was the original translation. They had to change it.
It's
No,
really
it's never
the
gonna sell.
original translation is just sad boy and piano.
Sad boy and piano.
Sad boy, sad piano.
So here's a quick synopsis of Sad Boy and Piano. A piano prodigy who lost his ability to play after suffering a traumatic event in his childhood is forced back into the spotlight by an eccentric girl with a secret of her own.
That's pretty accurate.
That's pretty
on
accurate.
brand. That's on brand.
It doesn't really specifically say, but the traumatic event, and this just is literally in the trailer for the show, but the traumatic event was his mom was incredibly abusive.
Yeah. Well, and she dies.
And then she dies.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's just part of the actual synopsis. This was
Yeah,
just
that's
the
not
one
a
on
spoiler.
IMDb.
That's like the jumping off point
Oh,
of the
it's like
whole.
first episode.
It's the
She's like
idea.
slapping the crap out of him. So
Yeah.
I think
But yeah, so this was directed by Kyohei Ishiguro, written by Takao Yoshioka, and the musical score was done by Masaru Yokoyama. Wow.
good job.
Done by his Studio A1 Pictures. There's no budget for this. There's no way to really find out how much each episode
It doesn't
cost.
have a box office because it was a TV show.
Yeah.
Was the director kind of green? this was like one of the few things he had done, right?
He's known for stuff after this.
Okay, so this was kind of his like
directorial debut.
Yeah, so he's known for Worlds Bubble Up Like a Soda Pop, which is one that came out in 2020 during the pandemic, which is it's a pretty good film, but it's not even then it's not like this amazing film that you need to go watch.
Right.
But it's definitely worth watching if you wanted to go into it. And then
Is it another slice of life type?
Yes.
Is this the most popular thing he's done? Probably.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Nothing like starting out with a banger and then just declining from there.
Well, I think so this was a manga.
We call it pulling a Steve.
This was a one-shot manga back in 2011. Okay. And there was
define one-shot manga.
It just means that it's not
short
a recurring.
Run. Like
yes, a short run. Yes, okay. It's a singular story. And
you have to read it in one shot. Otherwise,
you sit down at the table, you're committed. If you
the book disintegrates if you put it back on the shelf.
I was gonna say if you close it before you're finished, it turns into Death Note.
No. Not again. I've read Death Note so many times.
Oh man. But yeah, so there's 22 episodes in the series, and there's. Yeah, I'm actually really curious of what you guys think about this, because this is the second time I've seen it. I watched it when it first aired back in 2014, but I know this is both of y'all's first time watching it. And I know Ryan is a general musician, and
general
then
is a very
Steven
kind
is
way to
also
put it.
a musician. I'm not a musician.
Yeah, of the three of us, I guess you probably have the least. I can't say musical exposure because that's not true.
Yeah, so I grew up
it.
with two professional musicians. One actually is a violinist that I got to talk to for this
mother.
episode. It's my mom.
Spoiler, it's the mom.
But then my dad's also a professional drummer. So I grew up around classical music and theater and a whole bunch of stuff. I just never really picked up an instrument myself.
Is this like a rebel against the parents type thing?
No,
like
I actually tried piano for about a year, and it never really like stuck with me. And it may have just been the time period whenever I was being forced to learn it.
Your mother didn't get you in there young enough. You got to start them when they're 3, when they still want to impress the parents.
Traditionally, particularly with violin, a lot of really professional violinists start really early, like anywhere between 3 years old to 8 years old is kind of.
You start when you're 8. You're too old. Your fingers are already clumsy.
You say that, but my mom started when she was 8.
Well,
got him dead to rights.
Never heard of her before I met you, so clearly she started too late.
But yeah, so I actually did a quick interview recording with her of just kind of going over, because I showed her bits and pieces of the show, and I have a couple little recorded bits and pieces that we may or may not bring up throughout the episode. Yeah. And but yeah,
we have a resource. We should use it. So.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So she is just for her laurels, I guess, or bona fides.
Bona fides,
as Ryan would say it. So she started when she was 8. She went to Meadowmount, which I think is like a really big kind of like musician school. But then she also and then she also graduated from Juilliard,
which is the one that everyone actually knows.
Yes, so she's played for Stevie Wonder, Roger Daltrey, John Lennon. She's been around. She's done a lot of stuff, and she was in the Alabama Symphony before I was born. And it's she's pretty talented.
She's really good at what she does. She has a great career.
And oddly enough, my aunt is also a violinist who is in the Baltimore Symphony, first violin for like 25 years. And I asked her a couple questions.
Why are you such a failure?
I don't know. That's a great question.
At like family gatherings, do they get together and play "The Devil Went Down to Georgia" by Charlie Daniels, like against each other, dueling fiddles?
Well, it's funny. So my mom actually plays fiddle. She plays it like in like bars and bands and that kind of stuff. Yeah. So she actually does, like, she's done Devil Went Down to Georgia multiple times. I've listened to it, and she's phenomenal. My aunt, however, she is basically traditional classic all the way. So they probably wouldn't be able to dual violins. Maybe, I don't know. She's going to hear this and she's going to call me and get really mad. Probably.
She'd be like, "I wouldn't play the Charlie Daniel. I'd break out some Bach and show your mom how it's really done."
I'd show her how it's done.
But yeah, so I'm curious of what you guys think about this show.
Yeah, because you want to go first? You want me to go first?
You want me to go first on this?
I'll go first.
All right.
So I am extremely conflicted about this show. That is the way I would put it.
That's not how I would describe it.
I'll start with the things I like, right?
Yeah.
So I like the animation style. Yeah. Initially, I didn't really. Like, the lips looked kind of weird.
It looks like everyone kind of has lipstick on.
It does. And they have kind of like, not fish lips, but like you see the lower lip really prominently.
They're sort of pushed out from their mouth a little, yeah.
And like, you know, the side of his glasses, they don't animate it so you can see the eyes.
Oh, man.
And at first I was like,
much.
What is this? What's happening?
Well, so the reason why they do that is just so you can see the eyes. And
I know.
I
got it.
Just pair of glasses.
The first few times I was like,
let him wear contacts.
Are they not animating that right? You know, I was like,
it's just common.
It took me a minute, and then once I saw it, it was one of the things where every time at camp I was like, ugh.
Yeah, you just you can't unsee it.
You can't unsee it, yeah. I like the use of color that they do a lot. And again, the art style grew on me for sure by the end of it.
It definitely does grow on you as the show goes on. And they do have some really fantastic, like watercolor-esque, like kind of like still frames, but it's never a main part of the animation of the show.
Right. And then they do use a little bit of CG here and there for like some of the performances, specifically with the piano, like the close up of the hands. But I feel like that's probably more just from a time perspective of production.
Well, and that's kind of the thing is like, so for a lot of the animation in this, they did rotoscoping for the musical performances. And like, especially for the piano, like, I don't even want to imagine someone hand animating people doing the piano.
I don't want to imagine it either. I wanted to see it.
Right. No, I think in a bigger production they would have. It's got to be a money thing. I like most of the characters. I love the music and the performances. I really just wanted more of them. Honestly.
Yeah, like because it really front loads a lot of the musical performances, and then it just kind of lingers, and you get like one decent one at the end.
Yeah.
For this predominantly revolving around several musical competitions, there's a shocking lack of actual just performances.
Yeah. Yes. And I wondered midway through the show if that was because it's based on a manga, and the manga, like, you can't hear it, so they just didn't like dwell on the performances.
Why would they spend time?
It's entirely possible. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that the show delves into ideas like overcoming grief, PTSD.
Definitely like burnout is another.
The pressure on classical musicians. But I'm not in love with the execution of exploring those themes necessarily. And the stuff that I don't like sometimes it feels like it can't decide if it wants to be more about the music or more about the romance.
Yeah.
Like it feels like it shifts gears, and there'll be like one episode that's very music focused and one that's very
just
romance.
all melodrama, romance.
And the balancing act happens unevenly to me. Like it's not like some shows where they bounce between themes and it's like handled perfectly.
Yeah.
I really dislike Kosei as a main character. He reminds me a lot of Shinji from Evangelion to a degree.
That's a good
Kosei,
comparison.
get the piano.
Exactly. That's what it feels like to me.
Does that make Kaori his dad?
Kaori,
how are you saying that?
Kaori's she's sitting there. Steeple fingers over.
Become my accompanist.
Getting the piano. I understand like the themes of the show require him to be a character that's like struggling with a lot of issues.
Yeah,
right? I get that.
I mean, like he gets up and then he gets beat back down, and then gets up and gets beat back down again.
But I feel like
I
got up again at a top level.
Old man reference right there. Jeez.
At a top level, right? I feel like where the show struggles is it establishes that idea.
Yeah.
And then it goes back to that well way too much.
It does. Yeah.
Like, we got it.
It doesn't move along.
We understand. Like he's having a bad time.
Yeah, and it's like instead of it giving us more time in the show developing like some of the other characters and fleshing out other parts that I did like.
Yeah.
It's like it keeps going back and drawing out that part of where it's like I could have like a 30-second reminder of what he's going through.
We don't need like a whole half an episode.
We don't need a whole entire episode that is just in it. And I'm like, it reminded me of like Dragon Ball Z fights, but with like depression and sadness.
So instead of standing in the corner going, to charge up,
you're lying in the corner and cry. Arima was sad.
I can't remember which episode it was, but I had that moment at the end where it started and ended, and I felt like we got like nowhere. We just sat in like a depression funk I was like, this is like Dragon Ball Z. I was like,
so some of the episodes too, especially early on, they would play a scene and then you would flash back to the same scene, but with slightly extra things spoken and stuff. And I was like, we've already been here. Like, just get it out of the way and move on.
They do that at the end of episodes. They'll do kind of like a shortened version of it. And then at the beginning of the next episode, it'll be like a 5-minute cold open.
They would even do it like just in the episode too, and it just was like, whoa, like this is actually a little too DBZ of like we're still charging up.
Well, I think some of it could have been that it was airing week to week, or they may have been a pause, and so they're trying to like
potentially
recap people a little bit on what may have happened.
Well, yeah, and the week to week broadcast is definitely like it does hurt the
has
pacing.
Constraints.
Yes, it does.
Some of the other stuff, so some of the characters added in the second half of the show, to me, feel kind of superfluous.
They're a little shoehorned in.
Well, it takes time away from the characters that we're already not getting enough of.
We spent all the time building up.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I can get more into it after like the spoiler wall, but there's like, I feel like there's a couple of characters that could have been combined into one, and you could have executed both of their storylines to the same effect and taken up less time and not had.
I'm going to
disagree
with you on this one if I think I know where we're going with these characters. So, anyways.
Okay, cool.
Your opinion's wrong.
Stay tuned on next time after the spoiler wall. For me too, the only other thing I'll say, and then the rest of it has to happen behind the spoiler wall, and I want to hear what Steven thinks, is a lot of the comedy felt tonally off and out of place. Like some of it works. Yeah, there's definitely a few times that it did like a quick cut to comedy in the middle of something
that's like incredibly serious,
and it felt like whiplash. And it was like, maybe this works in a manga because you flip the page and then it's like and something else.
Yeah,
but like in the anime, it felt like there was a few of them that felt like I didn't laugh at this. It's not that.
Why are we here?
Why are we doing this? Yeah. You're getting in the way of the other stuff, which kind of goes back to what I was saying with the balance of like, that. And a lot of my complaints are that I think I liked a lot of parts of this show, and I saw the potential this show had.
What it could have been.
Yes. And that frustrates me. Like the stuff stands out because it's like it didn't.
Yeah,
it was like our issue with the creator, where you watch stuff happen and you're like, this could be so much more than it is.
Yeah. Steven, what did you think?
So if I were writing an IMDb review for this show, the title of my review would be Emotional Terrorism.
Okay.
Oh man, there are good things, right? The animation's pretty. I like the feel of most slice of life anime, where you have kind of the pausing on the trivial moments, right? Where it's the banal and making the basic look pretty, everyday life, etc. Those aspects, I love that just in a show in general. Yeah, mostly because you just don't get it in Western anything.
Yeah, well, it's very rare you get slice of life over here.
Or
in
they don't really they don't sit and focus on
things.
boring. They'd be like, well, you're just boring the audience. They're not going to tune in next week.
Yeah. Well, but to build up that a little bit, there's moments where like some of the emotional stuff that happens is like really understated and it's handled really well. It's like subtle, and you're like, ooh, yeah. And then other stuff is like so melodramatic,
like over the head with it.
And it's like, okay, it feels like there's two directors sometimes. Like
it definitely feels like Kyohei like really like couldn't decide. Yeah, in the tone of when like on you just not even on a per episode basis, on like a per scene basis.
Oh yeah,
he needs to get diagnosed bipolar or something. I mean, it was very whiplashy at times. Yeah. I mean, our main character, by the end of this show, it's not a question of where you're going to high school, bud. It's a question of where you're going to therapy.
Yeah.
My God.
Music is his therapy-ish?
Is it though?
Is it? And his abuser? What?
Yeah. Is it though? So I agree with Ryan in that the show had a lot of potential. There are a lot of good things working for it. But I don't know that it's necessarily put together as well as I would have hoped.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily come together as well as I would hope. It's especially from
it really like clunkily gets to the end of the show.
Well, and it does, a lot of it as soon as you're exposed to it, and part of this is just it's a show made in 2014. It's 2024.
Yeah.
A lot of the tropes existed before the manga was written. A lot of them have been used since after. So like some of the quote unquote foreshadowing is just so heavy handed now that like I think by episode 5 I was like, okay, well I know where this show goes.
Yes.
I know how this ends.
Well, and
now these episodes where we're just kind of dithering around, like, oh my god, just get there.
Yeah, I know what's happening. Just do it.
Like you've made it clear.
Get on with it.
I've seen this come up in a ton of like top 10 anime of all time, or like you have to watch this, anime list type stuff. And the people that love this show are like staunch defenders.
Oh, Andrew read a 3-star review because I looked at the reviews just to see afterwards, and there's like 2 1-star reviews.
Yeah,
I have like 200 something reviews.
And both of them are just total nonsense. They're not even like, I didn't even watch past the first episode.
One of the people who wrote paragraph, they wrote longer than the first episode is about just the first episode. It's ridiculous.
And they're like, I didn't watch anything past this. I'm like, well, I can't use this review.
Yeah.
And it's so like I'm very much on the same line. So when I watched this when it was coming out, it was very much kind of like one of those cultural like flashpoints for the community of anime that were really like into it, and then like you get like halfway through the show and you're like, oh no, this is where this is going.
Yeah.
And everyone just lost their mind.
Oh man, it took them that long to figure it out.
I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, because when this came out, this was still pretty newish for like, specifically for the anime community.
Okay, now that's fair.
Like,
because like
when
Manic Pixie Dream Girl was a big thing in the early 2000s.
State, all that kind of stuff.
Late 90s.
Lousy with this.
But the big thing here is that it's really more emotional terrorism at its finest, because I don't know
about finest.
Well, not. I mean, like
at its peak emotional terrorism.
Yeah, like that's kind of what I mean. Okay. But I'm very hot and cold on this show as well. I think a lot of the comedy just doesn't work. I think it's
grating almost.
There's a lot of times where like I'll be watching an episode and then I know that they're going to go into a comedy bit and I'm like, all right, time to pick up my phone, and like that is not what a show is supposed to do. It's supposed to engage you and supposed to keep you there, and all of the emotional moments, particularly around the musical performances and the competition scene between all of these incredibly talented kids. And like those really resonate. And like I've never played a musical instrument, but I can still get behind all of those moments and those emotions that these kids are having.
Yeah.
And you know, like whenever you're playing like I'll say competitive game, doesn't matter what it is, you find these rivals that you're always looking at
over time.
And those really hit. And then whenever you then ruin it with like really, really poor and I'm going to say crass comedy that just doesn't totally fit the show or the scene.
And it also doesn't totally fit because a lot of the comedy aspects basically change animation style, and it's like beyond what I would call like a chibi or anything like that, where they literally just like label the characters, and it's like, like there's some really good animation going on in this, and then this is already like story-wise jarring for this to be here, but it's also jarring on screen.
Yeah.
It's like that double whammy of it, really, especially when you're like deep in an emotional moment, and then it's like, wow.
Well, and particularly towards the end of the series.
It's not a pressure release.
It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like particularly towards the end of the series, like you have like some really good character developing moments between our core cast of 4 characters, really 3, because one of them is still kind of on the sidelines.
Yeah.
But
he plays sports.
It's funny. But it's definitely one of those where I feel that a couple of the characters that were introduced later on in the show didn't really I think that they needed to be introduced way beforehand so you can start building up their storyline.
Even some of them not at all.
Well, I was gonna say, or not at all. Like to me, it's like pick one.
Because
bring them in.
The second
early.
half of the show, we almost lose one of the main characters for long stretches where it's like, hey, like this is like we're building to something. We need more.
And they were such a driving force at the beginning of the show. And I understand like that's kind of the intention, but at the same time, it could have been done with a better hand.
The execution on this is just not smooth enough.
Yeah.
I feel like too, and I'm trying to remember, which anime I would have watched from like around 2013, 2014, 2015. But I feel like there's still a trope to this day, right? Of like in the second half of a show,
they introduce
new characters. Well, no, they introduce new characters.
Yeah.
Like they just did it on Freyrin.
Yeah.
You're watching that with me. Like, it's now we're past the halfway point of the show.
And we get
a new intro,
but we've had
these new characters.
This entire I'll say 16 episodes before this to get to know every single intimate detail of our main characters. So now we can spend that time to learn more about these new characters and not have to worry too much about.
Right.
And then the character development ones for your main characters, really, you already know kind of where it's going, but you still get a little bit more of everything. Where this, in Your Lie in April, we're still developing those characters when these new characters get introduced.
Yeah.
Because the pacing for that development is so slow.
It's so slow.
Particularly for Arima.
Right.
Because it just takes him so long to get over his initial PTSD, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
But it's definitely one of those where I feel that it could have been better.
Oh, they could have cut it so much, and I'll get it more in after spoiler wall.
Yeah, you have to get into spoilers to really get into that.
It's tough too because like you said, there's so many lists out there that recommend this show as like, oh, you have to watch this if you watch anime.
Right.
This is a great starter anime, which it's not. But
oh man, what an introduction to anime that would be.
I'm never watching again.
But the real issue is that there are just other shows that do this kind of mix of drama, melodrama, and comedy better than this. The only thing this show has really going for it is the musical performances are incredibly accurate.
Yeah.
And they look beautiful, and they sound beautiful too. Granted, like these are trained classical musicians that did the musical performances for the show.
They got very good musicians to actually play the actual music that is being played. Yes.
And oh yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, what did your mom think about the performances?
Yeah, so I can play a quick little clip of her essentially reacting and watching the first musical performance by Kaori, our young violinist, who was played by Yuno Shinohara, or performed by Yuno Shinohara, who's the violinist in real life.
First of all, a 14-year-old could do it, but only the finest play like that.
So someone who's more on the line of prodigy than...
Yes, absolutely. For 14, that would be prodigy. That was a beautiful rendition. Everything looked correct. I don't know enough about animation.
No, you don't have to.
But what I do know, the stance, the way she stood, the way she tuned, the actual positioning is perfect. It's beautifully done. And actually, every time I walk on stage, I pray. I literally do. I say, just give me the strength to make beautiful music. Now, maybe that's what she said in another way.
Yeah.
The comments of the older man
were
just outrageous.
Yeah.
They were outrageous. That's how I'm going to put it, because the whole premise of that piece is beautiful, and it's exactly what she did, and she was spectacular. The only thing I could say, the actual animation for the bow arm needed to be a little faster. It needed to actually coincide with the actual notes of the music, which is probably impossible. And if you're not a violinist, it would be impossible to tell you how to do that.
Yeah.
Because I'm not an animator.
Yeah, so it sounds like the performance was accurate.
Yeah, so I'm actually just going to go ahead and use a little bit of a trivia here.
Okay.
Basically, like we've already kind of talked about them rotoscoping the piano playing. However, they couldn't. Well, they couldn't use 3D for a violinist, mostly because it just doesn't work in that kind of 3D environment to make it as accurate as they wanted. So they still basically took Yuno Shinohara's performance, they recorded her playing it, and then they rotoscoped her directly and hand drew everything.
Oh man, what a project!
Which is cool, and it's funny too, because Kyohei, the director, he actually stated that, and because my mom, just said like, oh, the bow is not moving fast enough. He actually said it was impossible to animate how fast the bow truly moves because there's not enough frames.
Not unless you animate on the ones, I guess, like Akira.
There's not enough information in the actual anime to do that.
Yeah.
So he had to slow it down and embellish a couple things just to make it as close as he possibly could.
Sure.
Which that's just in and of itself pretty incredible when you think about.
Oh, it is.
How fast like a real musician is moving for some of these.
Yeah, and it's really cool because these performances are honestly incredible to watch, and like even if you don't watch the show itself, like go look up on YouTube and watch and just type in Your Lion April musical performances.
Right.
That's it. You'll get playlist upon playlist upon playlist of every single one, and they're all fantastic. They're great classical pieces already, but it's really fun seeing them kind of like embellished in like a dramatic anime style.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like you are drowning in a sea of noise? Well, boy, have we the lifeline for you to hear some sweet, beautiful music. Go to spoilersintendedpodcast.com where you can hear all of our previous episodes, along with links to things like our Discord, our socials, and our Patreon.
Our Discord can be the manic pixie dream girl that pulls you out of your funk, okay? We have a lot of fun over there. We talk about things we're reviewing, things we're not reviewing, our hobbies, what we're cooking, our pets.
What's happening just in the world of movies and film.
It's a great way to keep in touch with us. You should check it out.
We also have socials. We have 2 socials, Instagram and Facebook. You should absolutely follow us and give us a like on there. We try and post, what's coming up in the coming month, any kind of new episodes, obviously, all that kind of stuff. We'd really appreciate it. Like, shares, all the stuff. Yeah, did you want me to fade it out?
I was fading it out.
Were you?
It's done now.
All right. Well, we're back from the spoiler
That
wall.
that abrupt stop was us hitting the spoiler wall full speed.
Yeah, in a Mack truck. Bow.
Oh man. Okay.
Truck coon coming through for us.
So I only have 2 pieces of trivia for this show.
Oh wow, we're real light on trivia.
Well, no, there's really not that much because most of them are all like, oh, they play this song in the background of this thing.
Which doesn't tell you much.
Yeah, it doesn't tell you anything.
Yeah.
So there's 2. In an interview, One Piece creator Eiichiro Oda praised the series so much, declaring himself jealous of it and praising its ability to portray music in its art. Within the day, the series began selling out to the point that publishers had to order reprints.
Of the manga?
So
Yeah,
Oda's
no,
just
Oda's
Oda's moving this series basically is what you're.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Got the Oda bump.
Got that celebrity endorsement.
Well, so I think the series, I guess it's manga. It doesn't really specifically say. It could be copies of the Blu-ray. I don't know.
Or the DVD.
Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah. Maybe all
Way,
of it.
Oda likes it, and that made it sell out.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you have the...
Where does he find the time to watch other anime?
I mean, if you're a creator, you can find the time. Who knows?
Does he?
It's just on while he's drawing.
Yeah.
So in the scene where Kaori and Kosei or Arima first meet, she is playing Morning in the Slag Ravine from Castle in the Sky by Joe Hisaishi.
She sure
Which
is.
is Ghibli,
Yeah,
which
I
is
didn't
really
catch
cool.
that.
It's a good little kind of like nod there, particularly just because Joe Hisaishi is an amazing composer.
Right.
Yeah.
And obviously, like throughout the show, we definitely highlight a lot of very famous composers.
Yeah, I was gonna say in a show that's really like hammering down on the big name classical composers, be like put Joe in there too.
Yeah.
Like I don't hate it.
But yeah, so right before the spoiler wall, we kind of touched on the accuracy of the performances and stuff. But I also want to talk about the accuracy of like basically what the characters are saying is happening during the musical performances. And this is one of my bigger sticking points with the show whenever I first watched it and watched it now.
Are you talking about the judges' comments?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, well, and just everyone in general.
Like just the musicians, I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. So like whenever a character is playing and all the characters are commenting, oh, he's
like
changing up the
like in the
music
audience.
and it's just like
No, that felt like the very animeization of it. Yeah.
because the actual recordings that are being played during the show are verbatim.
They're like flawless.
Yeah,
sure.
They're flawless renditions of the actual musical score and not
Yeah.
like any kind of weird elaboration.
Well, I had this moment where I'm listening to it and I'm like, is he? What?
There was one, I don't remember which one it was that was being done. It was one of the Chopins. But like I paused, I'm pull this up because this sounds just dead on.
It is.
Yeah.
It's just the same
Well,
thing.
and I had this moment where I was like, maybe I have a blind spot for this specific piece. Like I've heard it, but like I guess not enough.
Yeah.
So I did the same thing. I pulled it up and I listened to it. I was like, okay. And I rewound it and played it back and I was like, I mean, this sounds like spot on. But to me, also that is like a very inside baseball thing of like, I guess maybe if you
that was the other thing
played
is like maybe I'm not deep enough into classical music because I
Right.
don't really know this.
then you could hear like the minor intonation differences with the hand gestures on the violin parts. But I was like, I felt like that was a very much a TV showization of
It is
what an audience would be.
Well,
like.
and because it was a manga initially, they can be however like as
you're imagining the music then.
you're
anyways.
imagining the music when you're reading it, so it doesn't matter.
Right, they have to have those comments
Yes,
in
exactly.
the manga because like
Otherwise, it's just the audience just stares at it blankly.
it's just 4 pages of music plays.
Yeah.
Music plays.
Yeah.
Well, and that's
Music
kind of the thing where like I feel that the director Kyohei could have either embellished it or had the musical performance actually change it up a little bit.
Yeah, like if
bit,
you're already paying someone to play this, be like, okay, I just want you to when you hit this section, kick it up a notch.
No, what you say is wail
So,
on it.
Yeah,
Wail on it.
I want you to embarrass Bach right here.
Yeah. So I asked my aunt and my mom this, and my aunt, she basically said, generally speaking, you need to be technically precise with your notes, like during competitions. But most instructors are going to also look at personal embellishments, like emphasizing certain notes and vibrato, like that you can like make a little bit higher volume or a little bit softer. And that's kind of like instead of like during classical, you need to hit every single note.
You're playing the notes, you're just playing them with different dynamics.
You're different dynamics, and that's where the personal embellishments come in. And it's not like you're changing the music.
Which the show gets into that a little bit, because in the first performance where he kind of loses, he can't hear his own notes.
Yeah.
It kind of goes into the idea that
Where he's like
just
slamming
hammering
the
the
keyboard.
keys
Yeah.
because he's trying to hear the sound, which to the audience would just be like, man, he is going after this keyboard.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where it's kind of inside in baseball where you're like, because I know these pieces and I'm like, but this is just the piece. Like, I don't need any of this commentary.
I had these moments where I was like questioning myself, where I was like, I don't know this song, but this doesn't sound. And like they would be like, the audience would be like, oh, he's caressing blood. I was like, am I just not like?
Yeah, am I not in it enough?
Classical music.
The funny part is too, like, so the Kreutzer, the one specifically that my mom had during the interview that we just listened to, one is incredibly technical piece by Beethoven, but there are multiple parts in the piece that are very boring, and all the pieces that are all the unnamed performers that are happening before obviously our main characters go on. They're playing all the boring parts, and then they're like, "All right, Kaori's on. Let's give her the most dramatic possible moments in this piece.
Give her the metal moment." Yeah,
which it's just kind of funny, and like obviously that's a good way to lead your audience.
Sure,
especially if your audience is not particularly like familiar with these kind of like musical pieces. And
I mean,
stuff.
I would say that like 90% of the audience is probably not.
Oh
familiar.
yeah, absolutely.
So
I mean,
like that's who you're doing it for.
Yeah, like I grew up listening to these, like, and my mom playing these pieces, and it's just one of those things where it's just like, all right, and I know what it is. But,
right.
Yeah.
But that is an exception, not the rule.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I think
100%.
for sure with their approach to it, that's probably because I had the same thing of like in some of the performances where I was like, I could do without the commentary. I just want to hear the performance.
Yeah,
like stop talking. This is so rude.
But that's how I think they build the drama of the scene.
It is, and it's a sports anime, but for music.
It's Dragon Ball Z. It's Yamcha on the sidelines going like, they're going too fast.
Yeah,
I can't see him.
Or
their power level's over 9,000.
Piccolo's going like
anime where they're like, he did the double dribble. Like, that's illegal.
Not in this sport. Yeah.
But yeah, so obviously, like the musical performances are very, very good, and I have one more like little bit of the interview that I want to play whenever we get to talking about burnout and just kind of like Kosei's ability to be Shinji with the piano.
Get back in the piano.
Well, let's just get into it now.
Yeah, let's get into it. I mean, burnout's a big part of the show.
Well, it really is, because like obviously he has PTSD, but then he also runs into these kind of moments.
Got PTSD from that bee. Let me tell you.
Wow.
Let me tell you.
As far as the panic he felt, I've felt that before. And you do feel like you're drowning. You feel like you can't look at the music and see it for what it is. And it does disappear off the page. That's a great analysis of how he felt. You could feel him in the water drowning. He couldn't get himself out of it. So he stopped hearing her. He couldn't focus on anything. And a lot of people feel that in their jobs. Your boss could be screaming at you and you're not hearing a word of it. To be honest, it's really well done, because then you have to convince yourself that there's something more to life than that moment. It's all in the head. And if you can get your head in the right place, everything comes into focus. And so that's what this boy did. And actually, this is a triumph in this, not a failure. The fact that he went there and he put himself in the worst possible place he could be.
The thing that I really like about these kind of moments in this show is that it's not just about, winning or losing or anything. It's about being part of the music and overcoming it and proving to yourself that you can still do it.
I think everyone, even in any professional sense, doesn't even have to be a musician, runs into this level of burnout to where, you're going through the motions.
I've never been underwater before.
I was like, my mom never hit me with a cane because I wouldn't do my job.
Well, and obviously, that's clearly levels. Like the main, sticking point for him is that his mom was a professional musician or pianist that, initially didn't want him to be one.
Yeah. Just
because she knew it was a hard and grueling life to build that up. But then obviously she got coerced, I guess, just by his talent. And then in some weird way, just beat the snot out of him to just do it.
So before we move on to the mom and how terrible she was and how they gave nothing in the arc to redeem her, to make
nothing
you
at all
care about him having closure with her. Because like he has the closure. I'm like, fine, I guess. Go burn in hell, lady.
Whatever you need to feel better about yourself in this moment.
The thing for me to go back to your mom's comments was like it's I love the idea that she was saying that, like, you know, she's experienced this kind of stuff, and like you feel like you're underwater, you see the notes disappear from the page. Because I thought that was just a real cool visual gag, or like a way to express the fact that you can't see what's going, you can't focus or whatever. But like, to get back to like his mom, right? Like they spend a ton of time focused on him wrestling with his demons.
12 episodes to be exact.
Yeah, being underwater.
A lot of
like,
time.
His mom, like, you know, doing all that. That, like, it, to me, like I said earlier, like, it was the pacing. It felt so slow because once he starts to come out of it, I start liking the show a lot more. And I feel like the problem
because he turns into a character.
Right. And so, like, I feel like if we could have gotten like 2 episodes of him being depressed, and then we start to see progress, and then we start to see progress, and like, and then we get like more with it, then it felt to me like by the time he starts coming out of his shell, I don't even care. You know, like almost like I've almost
because you're kind of over it by that point.
Like,
so what we needed, and this feels, these moments feel so easy, and I don't know why that they don't happen.
Yeah.
Because we see a moment, right? We see, it's not a flashback. He never experiences as a character, but we see her like laying in bed at night when she's like close to death, you know, feeling badly for a lot of the things, right?
Yeah.
Well, like the show did it for I can't remember her name. I get her name. Cowrie. It did it for Cowrie, where after she is gone, she leaves a note.
Yeah.
To him, talking about, explaining how she
a note from the mom would have been fine.
All you need from the mom is when Cowrie is hitting on this piece that was his mother's lullaby to him that he grew up with, is when he pulls it out of the shelf there, he opens it, and there's a note from his mother apologizing and explaining, like, what a catharsis, what a relief, and then we can actually maybe feel good for her, but we don't get it. And like, why?
I think the problem, number one, that's a great idea. That would be like a perfect way to like do that. The problem is, like, I don't think they had any kind of idea for how you could redeem her, because like,
well, but also, as she is presented, why would you want to redeem her?
Because I never understood, and I was like trying to understand it of like, okay, so she knows he can be really good, but did people beat her? You know, because like, I see a lot of other pianists out here, and they're not covered in bruises.
Yeah.
So like, why is she so hard? She acted like his life depends on it. Where's the dad? Like, he's off in business. Like, is he gonna like lose his job, and Bruce the kid's
Wayne, he's so orphan.
Yeah. Well, but like, that's another thing they don't broach, and you don't have to, but it's like the whole time the mom is terminal and struggling, and she's hard. I'm like, where's this dad? And then like, she's treating it like, if I don't train him, he's not going to be able to make money. And I'm like, but where's the dad? Can't he like make the money and take care of the kid?
Or like, just go to school and get good grades in math or something.
Right.
And that's kind of the thing is like, this is very much, I think, a very anime thing that happens a lot, where like you have absent parents. Particularly for like these kind of melodrama shows,
right?
Because I think a lot of these writers that are making like the original stories, they either don't have that kind of experience, so they don't know how to write for parents, or like
they just don't have an idea of what
they just
to do
don't have an idea. Yeah, because parents are generally like a nuclear option for storytelling.
Yeah,
because they can at some point they can control their kids' lives either by not giving the money anymore, whatever.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, they definitely use that here, but they didn't know how to write for the dad, because if a dad was in the picture, then like half this story doesn't really work that well.
Right. Yeah. And I'm not advocating for the dad to come back. I'm just saying that, like, to me, it would have been better if there was no dad.
Yeah.
Then the mom
it makes
is
way
like,
more sense for her to push him.
I'm not going to be on this earth for long. I have to get as much knowledge into you as possible.
And it's the only thing I can give you to teach you.
Right.
I can't give you better
math scores. And it's definitely one of those things where I understand, like, if he is a kid, when she's trying to teach him, and he is clearly very talented, but he is not following her orders like verbatim, and like he's like losing competitions, that kind of stuff, like I can understand from her perspective she needs to be hard on him, but like he's winning all this stuff.
He's not child abuse hard though.
Well, no, never.
But, what I'm saying? Yeah, like
Andrew's like, second place. You know what that is? That's
spare the rod, spoil the child.
Well, like, so even,
Get over here, Shinji.
Even moving away from this, it's definitely one of those, like, he clearly is just surrounded by a bunch of abusive people.
Yeah.
Because Kaori beats the snot out of him.
Oh my gosh,
Tsubaki
so
kicks him all the time.
The thing to me is like,
at least with Tsubaki, there's some give and take there.
Yeah.
there
We
is,
see a little bit there. We don't see it with any other character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like back to just to finish the mom thing, like not giving her any kind of redeeming qualities. Cause like even when he's like sitting there, reminiscing, you don't really see her do anything cool with the kid to go like,
It's not
oh,
like
they had a lot of
fluffy
love.
moment,
It's
yeah.
she let him lay under the piano while she played, and you're like, okay, that's not really like a good thing. Like I could have gone for seeing her take him to the park, seeing them interact in some way that's like, oh, before her terminal illness, she was a
happy, bright
cool
person.
mom.
Yeah.
So he's remembering the good parts and then closure.
Yeah.
We don't get that. So we just get like him accepting that like his mom was rough, and then she goes on to heaven, and you're like, okay, what closure is this?
She like throws his cat away because he's
Right.
stressed.
Oh, man.
my
I know. I'm
gosh.
like,
all of the
terrible.
cat stuff in the show is just.
I know. Like, we have a cat die.
They just randomly hit a
Just-
cat with
yeah.
a car so we can take it to the emergency vet, but it dies anyways. He sits there with the blood. Like, what are you doing?
That's
Yeah.
such an Evangelion thing, too.
It is, but good lord.
Get in the piano, Shinji.
But it's funny too, because like whenever I like was watching this show, I didn't think of like really connecting like Shinji from Evangelion to be like the analog for Kosei, but like now that we've said it, I'm like,
lines
oh,
up.
this is exactly,
It's exactly
what it
up,
is.
yeah.
I thought on like episode 4, and I was like, my God. I told Andrew a couple weeks ago, I think you were upstairs getting water or something.
Yeah.
Because you hadn't started the show yet.
hadn't started,
I
yeah.
said, I think it was like episode 10. I can't remember. It was close to the 12th
If
episode.
this boy can't hear the notes one more time.
My wife was upstairs. I'm watching it downstairs because she's like, I'm good. I don't need to watch this, Because she walked through and saw some of it, saw how melodramatic it was. She was like, I think I'm set. And so I'm watching it, and I just screamed, or I didn't scream, I said it really loud. If they don't let this kid hear the notes, I'm gonna choke myself. And I didn't remember saying it. That's how it came out in just a pure like
Rage.
of, And so then I went upstairs to get water, and she's like, why would you choke yourself? And I go, what are you talking about? And she's like, you said if they don't let this kid hear the notes, you're gonna choke yourself. And I was like, oh, if they don't, I am gonna choke myself. So yes, definitely. Like I said before, they spent too much time on him underwater. I feel like they didn't explain enough of the mom to redeem her.
Yeah.
Because again, where's the dad at? He can just take care. You have a sister that teaches piano. She can just take over when you're gone. There's no need to rush this through while you're alive.
Not a sister.
Or
Just a mentor.
mentor, whatever. Yeah.
No, a college
family friend.
College friend, whatever. Yeah. He calls
I-
her aunt at one point.
Well,
I
that's
think that's more of just
affection.
Right.
term of
But that tripped me up. I thought she was like literally
I
the
will
aunt.
say my favorite character of the whole show is her daughter.
Dude, with
she's pretty cool.
The little like
Sita.
dots for
the
eyes.
dead eyes,
Yeah.
like a shark, the eyes like
what
a
is-
doll.
yeah, Jaws over
Like
here.
everybody else looks like a real person.
I know.
And this child for the whole time is the deadest of eyes. Like, good lord.
That also felt like a weird choice.
Yeah.
Of like kind of like
But
the
it,
comedy.
I mean,
I
it
think it
certainly made her
just
stand
shows-
out.
Yeah, I think it just really shows like her mental state, which is just nothing. There's
Just
nothing
like
happening
dead behind the
Nothing
eyes.
going on in that head.
Just flat.
Yeah.
But yeah, like talking about some of the other characters. Obviously, we have Kosei and Kaori, which the two main characters, the driving force. But you have these supporting characters that some of them, like Tsubaki, get a ton of extra development
Tsubaki
stuff.
didn't get enough.
I didn't get
even,
enough
though.
of Tsubaki.
No, she needed more.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
you need so much more.
But she still got like
She got more
like,
than other people.
So
Yeah.
much screen time, and she still needed more to really develop a lot of these feelings of guilt that she has,
Yeah.
and obviously like her unrequited love.
Well, also like the connection between her and Kosei.
Yeah.
I almost called him Shinji. I had to catch myself.
Well, and it too, like when you look at like Watari, Ryota, the sports
Yeah,
friend,
the soccer player.
I felt like man, there's got to be a cool story here with him that we're not getting into.
I thought the moment when he lost the
and he like
the
breaks
game
down
and breaks down, that was fantastic.
Because like he
more
keeps
of that, please.
He keeps it together on field, like picks up his teammate. Hey, you know, we shake hands, and he goes in the bathroom and breaks down. I was like, oh wow, we got some depth here. Because up to that point, it's just constantly like, oh, my best friend, the flat cardboard. Oh, my best friend, the piece of cardboard. And then after that, it was just like, oh, my best friend. It's like, why are y'all friends?
Yeah.
Like, I get why you and Tsubaki are friends. You grew up next door. You always hung out, same age.
Yeah.
Like, perfect sense. I don't understand why this third kid is friends with y'all at all.
Yeah, because he's clearly like super popular.
He's popular with everybody. He's sports jock. Like he's all the things that.
It's like, why are you here?
Kusei just isn't in any way, shape, or form.
Well, and I mean, sometimes friendships just happen like that.
I mean, it does.
Yeah.
And
but
like,
they didn't give us enough backstory on him to know that, like, oh, he hit him in the head with a soccer ball one time, apologized, and they were just friends immediately after that. You know.
Well, I mean, like Tsubaki is also a big sports jock.
Well,
like,
and we get a fantastic moment whenever she flubs her, trying to just go home.
Oh yeah.
And then hurts her ankle,
and
then
her
they have
full on rage about.
Yeah. I mean, like, and those moments are really, really good, but
just need to be more.
They're always undercut by really poor comedy breaks with her that always ruin the moment with her, because like she's definitely one of my favorite characters, but then like she doesn't get the development that we want, and then she just kind of turns into a nag for a lot of the show.
Well, and like you have all this time spent with her with Kishigawa, her friend.
Oh yeah, the upperclassman.
She has the ponytail.
yeah,
no,
yeah.
the
ponytail.
now.
Oh yeah,
Kishigawa,
Kashigawa.
No, hold on.
I actually don't have,
Kashiwagi is her name.
Kashiwagi?
It is.
but yeah, just her friend.
Her friend, but her friend, where she has like all the relationship discussions. And I thought those were really good pieces.
They were.
But I think we're all kind
because
of...
everyone has those friends when you're growing up that like they know you, like they know like what you're going through, even if they're not going to say it outright.
Well, but I think we're also kind of dancing around what I think is the big issue with the show is that it doesn't tie everything off well enough. Like there's a ground of like a lot of Japanese film and shows, they kind of leave it open-ended.
Yeah.
And then you have some like Western shows and stuff where it's like everything comes up nicely in a bow.
Yeah.
And like the ideal place is somewhere in the middle there. And this is like off the scale to the left here.
Well, I mean, because
we
like,
don't resolve anything. It's just depression at the end.
Yeah, because Kosei just, I mean, like, now we'll definitely say this, because I know we're ragging on it a lot.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to like say I didn't like the show, because there are definitely some really good moments in it, and I think particularly the final episode is very, very well done.
Well, it's a pendulum of going from Triton cliche to, oh man, that really hits, to why are we back over here, to, oh man, this really hits, to stop going back to the other side, please. And like, but like in terms of resolution, right? He's playing this performance for his marks to get into the school.
The school, yeah.
Do we ever even hear? Does he make it?
No,
we don't know.
I mean, you just assume.
We assume,
but that's not satisfying. Do we assume like Tsubaki gets her grades up, so she thinks she can get into the school near where she hopes he's going to go?
We assume.
That's good enough. She basically in the second to last episode, she professes his love for him.
Yeah,
and there's almost,
and he's just like, oh, thanks.
There's like no.
Yeah,
and that's the other problem is. It's a very unrequited love on her side, and we never get any kind of like feedback from him.
Yeah.
So by the end of the show,
he acknowledges that she's like, oh, like she has feelings for me, and I'm just gonna ignore those. I'm gonna put those over here.
I feel like earlier in the first half of the show, you see some of him being sort of like, oh, she's like growing up with like she's like more than just the kid sister kind of feelings.
Yeah.
And they don't go back into that. And so by the end of the show, it's so open-ended that there is no, for all the horrible things that happen throughout, there's no uplifting anything to make it feel worth it.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is like, I think one of the reasons why too is because obviously like Kaori gets sidelined because of her illness, which was apparently bone marrow.
Leukemia?
How do we know this? Just like a
it's
trivia?
it's just trivia.
In the manga.
In the show, they don't like.
Yeah, they don't really.
No,
it's just a
it could be MS. It could be
Any
a whole
number of
any number of things. Yeah.
Well, so go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I mean, but like obviously you do have at least closure with her with the note that or the letter that she leaves him, which like that kind of thing. Like I know it's a little cliche, but man, that always hits. just because like you do finally get some closure with her.
It pays off. It explains
does.
her actions. It explains why she's doing it. Like we get satisfaction in understanding who she is at that point.
Yeah.
So I did not hit on that moment. I disliked that a lot.
Really?
The lie in April, the show, it's pitiful. I sat there when it happened. It undercut everything to me. The idea that she just met some random kid and like fell in love with him is way more powerful to me than like she saw a performance and became a stalker and like the whole lie of like.
I mean, that's fair actually.
I couldn't get into this friend group. You could have walked up to any one of those dudes.
She's beautiful.
Like, what's up, y'all? And they would have been immediately in.
They did the oh gosh, what was the terrible like romance movie from the late 90s, early 2000s?
You gotta be more specific to that.
It's an incredibly good-looking girl, but she has glasses. They take the glasses off.
She's all that.
She's all that.
She's Rachel Lee Cook.
Where it's like an incredibly good-looking girl, and they're like, yeah, but she wears glasses. Ew. And like they did the exact same thing with her, where she's like in middle school. She's like, I can't fit in with this.
I finally manned up and got contacts.
I got contacts, so now I'm beautiful. It's like, what?
Princess Diaries does that too.
It does.
Yeah, it's a trope. But like to me, it's like when the reveal happens in the letter, I audibly said "boo" out like that right there because I was like, that undercuts to me so much of what was
that's
building
totally
up
fair
there
too. Like I don't.
But like other moments for her, like the bit where she's walking the halls in the hospital and collapses, and she's like screaming at her legs. That was a huge moment. The bit where it's part of the letter recap where she sneaks into the waiting room late and sees her parents breaking down crying and realizing, oh, I don't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
Like that's huge.
Those are some incredible moments,
emotional moments.
It's just getting to them through some of the other just like what are these other decisions.
And to the point of the last episode and the last performance, right? Like I loved the last performance. I love the idea that he played with her in spirit, and I love that she didn't come through
his mental closure that like she's gonna die,
right? And that she didn't make it through. She didn't survive. It's not this happy ending. I was like, that's cool. I like that they went about it that way.
Yeah.
I think again, we're kind of nitpicking, but it's like it's the same problem of. If they had more performances, let's say in the middle of the show, before they sideline her, where you get to see the rough patch at the front, he comes out of his funk quicker, they actually have a few performances together, and you get to see the good times.
They're nailing it,
They're nailing it, and they're in sync.
Tearing it up.
He's having this moment of like, am I falling for this girl?
Am I back in love with music and this girl?
And this girl, yeah. Then at the end, when you don't get the final performance with them, but you do get it in spirit, that hits like crazy. This time when it hit, I was like, finally they get to play again. Oh, she's dead.
See, I think my favorite performance was still the second one, where
Rondo Introduction and Capricioso.
Yes, where she
Rondo of Blood was a Castlevania that came out in SNES. It was TurboGrafx, but it was
where she isn't able to make the performance, and they're like pleading with Mike.
That one.
Yeah, they're pleading with him to let them go last to give her a chance to show up because they don't know.
That's Love Sorrow. Yeah.
And he's like super stuck up brat, like no, absolutely not. And then
Arma's like, I'll just do it myself.
Kusa is like. Drop
Kosei.
like Kosei, whatever his name is.
Kosei.
Kosei is the cool version of Kosei.
Kosei is like just mic drops this kid and just goes out there as the accompanist, where everyone's like, "Why is the piano player going out by himself? It's supposed to be
at a violin competition."
And then he just drops the absolute hammer. Well, it's a gala. It's an exhibition. Yeah. But he drops the absolute hammer, and when he gets up to leave, the kids just sit there in the wings like, "Oh crap, I have to follow this."
Yeah, but then he does. He does really good.
No, he does. And he becomes a fan. But it's just that swing moment.
It is
really made me like the character of
Kosei. We just named it earlier. Now, actually, kind of talking about that though, because that's like towards a little bit, the
midway point.
The midway point is whenever I think we really need to get introduced to Nagi, the younger sister,
either earlier or just not at all.
Well, because that's the thing is like I love their duet. It's phenomenal.
It's a cool show.
It's really good.
But imagine if that duet was just K-name. I hate these names. Cowrie instead.
K-name. So my point earlier before the spoiler wall, what I was saying is that the character of Emmy and the character of Nagi could have been combined. Because Nagi,
I could see that.
Emmy's kind of whole thing is that she's like secretly admires him, but she's a rival.
Dude, this kid is like just being pursued by so many women that he has no clue about.
Also felt
Shinji.
like
Infuriates me. Infuriates me.
So I wrote down in my things, I was
that's
like,
the cool aunt.
yeah, I know. It's like
I know
it's Shinji. It's Evangelion all over again.
Oda's
Is Your Lie in April just an homage to Evangelion?
Oda's like, I loved it because it's just Evangelion again.
That's probably
Another depressed director. Perfect.
But like what I wrote down was I liked the character of Kaori so much that I think Kosei was way beneath her, and I can't root for them to ever get together. And then when it comes to Emmy, I was like, what do these women like? This dude just plays the piano. He's not like.
Well, this is just like being
their hearts with music.
I guess
not to be that person to Ryan, but this is like being the guitarist in a band, and every woman wants you, which you wouldn't know because you're the bassist.
Because you're the bassist. Yeah, I knew where that was going.
There was a meme. It's
lay it up.
It's a bunch of different dudes, like members of the band. It's like the guitar player, and it's got like like 3 or 4 girls, like lead singer. It's got like 10 women around him. It's like drummer. It's like 1 girl, and the bass player. It's got 5 other bass players around him talking about the gear that he played. And I was like, I've done that at a show. I've gone up to, hey man, so you play? I see. It's an Ampeg over there. Anyways, but so for me, like the thing with the main 2, right? Kosei and Kaori.
I'm not even going to try and pronounce her last name. That's a hard Japanese name to pronounce.
Oh, sorry. Before we get into those 2, back to Emmy, right?
Yeah.
Emmy and Nagi. I think those 2 characters could have been combined.
Yeah.
Like we don't need 2 rivals for Kosei in the second half. We could have just had Takeshi, right? Like
he's a fantastic character. I really like him.
I liked all of that.
Yes.
Especially like him, Kosei coming back to competitions after being gone for a couple of years,
right?
And they're both like standing, talking to each other, like it's that dude back. Oh man, he better remember us. So he's just like, who are y'all?
Who are you again?
Well, that's the thing is like if like I know Steven and I played on like competitive like tabletop games, totally different than musician stuff.
Same thing,
but it's
totally
like you do run into those kind of
like
those rivals and these kind of like competition nuances and. I really like hit well with those kind of moments. Perfect. Yeah, because this is exactly how it is.
But again, like to your point, they should have introduced him earlier in the season. It shouldn't have been at the halfway point.
You mean Nagi?
Takeshi.
Oh, I mean, he was introduced at episode 7.
I
think you said that before the spoiler wall.
I didn't mind their introduction.
I didn't mind it. I think if you hit him out of his funk earlier in the first half of the season,
just for our own sake,
then you can bring in the rival earlier and then develop him more, and then you get rid of Emmy in terms of like now he doesn't need 2 rivals. But he needs 1.
My thing with that whole arc is that arc feels complete because it starts with them not really knowing each other,
and then they have like great little moments.
They have the moment like late in the show where they're sitting in the hallway together and he's handing out the egg sandwiches, which is like one of the few pieces of comedy that actually landed.
Yeah,
because he did the whole spiel once with her, and then like the other dude came out and was like, he's gonna do it again, and he did perfect. So like that arc felt like it had a good beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah.
So I didn't really complain about those as much. I didn't feel like they stood out. I thought they felt really appropriate for the type of show this was.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
But I was just going to say to steer it, unless you had more to say about them specifically.
No.
I was going to say
I thought they were fantastic.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I definitely can understand Emmy and Nagi being combined.
Just to give us more time again with characters like Watari, like
just a little bit more screen time.
We spent so much. There was one episode specifically that really dialed in on Emmy, and I don't feel like it really advanced
we didn't
much
need anything.
of anything. Where I was like, that could have been another Tsubaki episode.
That could have get us back to the main 4.
Yeah, and so to the main 4 with Kosei and Kaori, right?
Kaori.
She's a cow.
Kaori. No. Kosei and Kaori. Like their relationship had what felt like a lot of starts and stops. Like it kept going back and forth, and it kind of similar to him coming out of his
shell.
depression.
Yeah, it's like, oh, we're back here now.
We're back here. Like it regressed so many times that it started to get frustrating towards the end because again we didn't get those extra performances like I would have liked where they're really hitting extra time where they're just like on top of it. So when you get to the end, it's like such a bittersweet thing that she admits in this letter that like, hey, I've loved you. And it's like, lady, you've had all this time to say this. Like, what pressures do you have? Like,
do you not understand how good looking you are and how easily you could have just walked up to him at any moment in your life? And instead you're like, well, I'll pretend that I'll tell his friend that I'm actually interested in the other friend, and that way I can be like, now you're just hanging out with this doofus for forever.
For forever. You're wasting time.
You don't have much time.
Yeah, and it's definitely one of those. And I will say, like, I liked the touch that they did animation-wise is basically at the beginning of the series, her hair is incredibly blonde.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about with color earlier.
And then
she gets real pale.
Yeah, as she gets worse,
it's like grayish.
Yeah, it turns grayish and everything like that. And clearly, like, it's a good way to kind of like show your audience without telling them exactly. It's like, hey, she's gonna die.
Yeah, I mean,
they don't have to do like a firework burning out in her hand, or the firefly light fading out as she's staring at. No, they just clobber you over the head with that or anything. Well,
it's funny too, because I remember when we were watching this weekly, like me and my wife were watching it, and then we got to like a certain point, and my wife was like, she's gonna die, I'm out, and she just hit the eject button and never watched it again.
Yeah.
Dude, episode 5 when she like collapses at the end of the performance, I stood up. But that freaking die.
That was still at least pretty justifiable, just because like the piece that she just played
is hard.
It's very hard, incredibly fast, and there's a lot of like very note intensive. And you don't know what her ailment is.
But I think for me, like the problem too with their relationship and the stuff is that like there's the manic pixie dream girl thing, right, has been done, and I've seen the version where the manic pixie dream girl dies at the end version, where the kid finally comes out of his shell, and then they
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
No, he wipes his memories.
That's what it is.
Thing.
Yeah.
That's a different.
But like what I'm getting at is like
what's one that's the one where the manic pixie dream girl
what's the one with the
Not Garden State?
It's a Nicholas Sparks, I want to say. Give me a second.
Fault in Our Stars.
Maybe that one.
Yes.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, Fault in Our Stars. Man,
that's
that is such a sad movie.
That has cancer in it because of course.
Yeah, she has cancer all over her
I feel
body.
like there's another one too. The reverse of it's like My Girl, where Macaulay Culkin.
I mean, this is a total tangent, but Fault in Our Stars, Shailene Woodley does a fantastic job in that movie. It's really good.
There are 3 Nicholas Sparks books that were turned into movies.
Yeah.
Andrew, look it up. I thought you were reaching for your phone.
No, I'm getting water.
I thought you were reaching for your phone.
It was Notebook,
I'll look it up.
And then Fault in Our Stars and something else. Anyways, what I was getting at is when she starts to get sick, I knew it. I was like, this chick's going to beef it, no question. And
they're really trying like, oh, there's going to be an operation that
the whole time I'm over here going like, this chick's in the dirt already. What are we doing? Like, there's no way. And I don't think that's a detriment. I think it's fine that it signals it early. I just wish it did more in between when they start signaling.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of one of those things where, like, I wish that she would have obviously talked about her feelings about Kosei way earlier than a letter after she's dead.
Well, and anything.
The couple of moments where like he's thinking about going to see her at the hospital and then doesn't. I'm like, what are you? You're regressing.
He does it like 3
times.
He does it like 3 times, and it's like, it's the depression thing all over again.
Yeah.
You know what? Actually, you know what my biggest complaint is? This is like, it's supposed to be like a romance, and like the romance of music, totally there.
Yeah.
Nobody kisses. There's not even one kiss in this whole
There's no
film.
smooches.
Where's the kiss?
Like, how do you
give him tongue?
How do you actually seal off the fact that we have like an actual romance?
So, and this is one of those things where I definitely think that Japanese or anime specifically, particularly romances, have a very hard time making any of their characters actually kiss.
I thought you were gonna say they can't draw it. It's
no,
hard.
they don't know how they've never been kissed.
Like,
These animators, they never get outside.
I don't know. I've never been kissed.
What does it look like? I don't know.
This is a little.
They're slapping foreheads together. Is this it?
Miyazaki's over there like an 80-year-old man. Like, you do this, I think. Like, take the cigarette out of your mouth first.
No, it's like this on a cigarette. And they're like, okay, got it.
But this is kind of metagaming in the anime community, but a lot you have these really rabid hardcore fans that go for pairings, and the second that you have some kind of definitive romance,
you draw the line, you turn off half the fan base.
Well, and this actually happened in a show called Darling in the Franxx in 2016 or something.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe that's the show.
No, it is. So basically,
the name
you have
of it?
Darling in the Franxx. It's Evangelion but with sex. Anyways,
nice.
Instead of getting in the robot, you get in the girl.
Well, get in here, shit.
halfway through the show, you have this basically like clearly like this is the route that the story is taking, where these two characters are meant to be together. That's the thing. That's what's going to happen. There's a secondary character that essentially steals a kiss of our main guy. And I kid you not, the entire community lost their mind because of this girl that is clearly not meant for him.
That bee.
Yeah, like pretty much. Like I have choice words, but it's definitely one of those things where like everyone lost their absolute mind about it, and they actually
for it or against it?
No, against it. They boycotted the show for like weeks because it was an original story, so no one saw it coming, and she basically like did that. So if you had someone like Tsubaki, go and just like steal a kiss on Kohei, like that changes the dynamic completely.
To an extent, but I think you already know that she has feelings for Kosei.
And I actually don't think that they're a bad pairing.
I was going to say, like, I would not have been mad if she had stolen a kiss.
She's a little too abusive.
She's a little abusive.
But
he's used
even
to
if it's
but
just
childhood friends, like I had, relationships like that when I was younger with other girls that I grew up with.
We're talking about Kaori here, right?
No, both.
Oh, okay. All right.
And they're both pretty abusive.
Because I don't mind Tsubaki.
He needs to man up.
Because he actually trades back, like when her ankle's hurt, and then she's walking home, and he like offers help. She's like, I need help. And he just like touches her shin. And she's of course I know you're hurt.
Yeah.
And like that was one great moment.
Yeah.
Need more of that.
Yeah.
Not hard.
It was heartfelt and comedic.
Yeah.
In one...
Again, they slam dunked that. Like it does sound like we rag on this a lot.
Yeah.
But it's because I think
we see the potential.
There are some real gems in the midst of a lot of you just have to plow through emotional terrorism while the cat's being thrown out because it scratched him and his mom's a psychopath.
Yeah, I mean, like there's a lot of really good moments in this that are mired in between a lot of very cliche tropes that just kind of like crop up here and there, and it's just very anime. And I don't think I could ever really recommend this to like anyone.
Yeah,
we didn't really get into that earlier.
I just want to cry. I'm like, go watch Eerily in April.
I didn't cry in this show.
I didn't either.
But I'm saying like, so it would be even hard.
This didn't make Andrew cry.
Nah.
Oh my gosh! Wow, this really didn't do a good job. It's so easy.
I knew it was coming.
It was really obvious.
I did cry the first time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I did cry the first time.
Well, and I wrote that down a couple times. I wonder what my thoughts on this would have been if I watched this week to week in 2014.
And it definitely hit different when everyone else was collectively watching it at the same time.
Yeah, especially because I watched it in like 2 and 3 episode blocks.
Right, yeah. If I'd waited a week between each one, would I have been as...
emotionally attached or not attached or whatever?
Or as frustrated with like, we're still on this?
Just be like, next week, more depression.
Yeah. But that does sound, kind of like we're slowing down here.
I think we could talk about this ad nauseum for a long time, but we've hit the main points.
The Cliff Notes is there was a lot of potential. Could have been better.
Yeah.
So
and obviously musical performances absolutely
great,
killer.
Phenomenal. Yeah.
Phenomenal. Absolutely awesome.
So in the terms of like recommendations and rewatch,
I definitely want to rewatch this again.
I want to get it out there. Yeah.
I'll rewatch the musical performances again.
I think this being in like a top 10 anime list is kind of a travesty.
It is.
And it being in a starter, you should watch this as your first.
Absolutely
is an absolute.
It needs to get right out of there.
Heinous heresy. This is not a starter anime.
I would only recommend this to someone that loves like melodrama and tragedy romance. Like this is your thing. Like go watch it if you haven't seen it. You probably already have.
Yeah.
But didn't you say that you showed us something to your aunt from this, and she commented about how like, wow, this is actually dealing with real emotions.
It's like a real show.
Oh
it's
yeah,
like a real show.
Yeah. I mean, like that's the thing is, so like both my mom and my aunt have never watched anime before, so they're not like they're not that they don't understand. They're not used to like the kind of like tropes and stuff that we're used to seeing when we watch it. So whenever they're watching, like, oh, these are like real characters. It's not like Looney Tunes, which is their version,
their concept. Yeah,
their concept of like animated shows.
Right.
And like my aunt loved it. She watched like basically the whole episode when they did the second performance of Introduction and Rondo Capriccioso. And one, she loved the absolute musical performance. She thought it was fantastic. But then she also is like, they do such a good job at showing the emotions and explaining to the viewer without like just hitting it over the head. And obviously she only watched one episode. But
in that episode they did.
Yeah. And it does such a good job at telling the story of the music and the performance and everything like that. And she absolutely loved it. My other aunt, Betsy, watched it too. And she has kids, but she was like, "Oh, it's like Pokemon," and I'm like, it's kind of like Pokemon.
Sure.
It's exactly like Pokemon.
This is definitely what Pokemon was like. This next week, time for Ash to be depressed again.
Yeah. Get the ball, Pikachu.
Get the ball, Pikachu.
All right, so that does sound like we're kind of wrapping up. But before we go, we have to talk about our Patreon. For just $1 a month, you can support the show. It gives us all, our equipment and other things.
It pays hosting.
Yeah, there you go. You guys got it.
This is a tremendous return on investment because you get access to all of our bonus episodes, and we get a little different, a little off format, a little wacky, a little weird. We do things like tier lists where we try different foods and rate them.
We fight presidents.
We have fought presidents. We will hopefully fight other things. We
probably monarchs.
We invoke ChatGPT to aid us in different things.
So we're in the middle of Romance Month,
Yes.
and if you're a patron this month, you get to listen to us
talk about Dear Abby,
essentially
ChatGPT.
Yeah, we're giving relationship
Dear
advice,
ChatGPT.
and these relationship questions came from ChatGPT, and it goes off the rails.
Gets off the rails.
I definitely haven't laughed that hard in a very long time.
It's worth
years.
$1. I'll put it that way,
else,
guys.
we entertained Andrew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So as always, follow us on social, leave us a review wherever you're listening now, and share us with a friend. We'd really appreciate it. So that does sound like all the time we have this week. Until next time, I'm Andrew.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Steven.
And every spoiler was intended.